And we're live.
We're live again.
We're back at it.
We're back at it.
Today we're going to talk about two of the 48 laws of power. We're going to pick two of them. But before we get into those, which are really interesting, tell us the story of Henry Ford.
Oh, so he was ready to expand and he wanted to hire 2 engineers. Okay. And so what he ended up doing is he took both of them out to dinner. And throughout the dinner, they talked about everything and anything, but nothing about the business. And at the end of the dinner, after he paid the check, he said, okay, we are going to use your services. We're going to hire you. And to the other gentleman, he said, and we're going to pass on you for the moment. For now, we're not going to proceed with you. Now, they were both young. The young man that was not picked said, but Mr. Ford, how can you possibly pick one of us over the other when we never talked about the business, okay? You never asked us any questions on anything, new ideas that we have in order to generate, to make the business better. And you just pick one over the other, and we both have the same credentials. We both come from great universities. We've got great resumes. And Henry Ford said, well, for 2 reasons. Number one, the gentleman that I picked, when they brought the steak to the table, his food, he first tasted it, and then he added salt to it. You, on the other hand, they brought the steak to the table, and you added salt to it, and then you tasted it. I like someone that is willing to try something, and if it doesn't work, then changes it. Not someone that just changes something without even trying it. So that was number one, and I thought it was super interesting. And the other reason was that he told the young man, look, you didn't treat the waiters and the waitresses with respect. They were totally insignificant to you and oblivious to you. The only time that you were using respect at the table was when you addressed yourself to me. But everybody else was totally insignificant. And a leader has to be aware of what's going on in his surroundings and treat people properly and correctly so that they can lead those people to higher heights. And that's a tremendous story. And it goes to show you, the devil's in the details. He was watching absolutely everything. So he must have been a master of human behavior, because that story went on to pass on in history. It's very interesting. Cool. Yeah.
It's really cool, and it's psychology and
sure,
observation, which is something that is useful, I think, just in general in life and business. And super cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, that impacted me, and so it stuck with me for a while.
Yeah. So let's get into the 48 laws of power, which I'm sure Henry Ford used, I'm sure, some of these laws.
Yeah, well, the book wasn't written by that time, because right. Robert Greene is not that old.
He's the author.
He's the author. But some people know him, like Robert Greene says, instinctively.
Right.
There are some people, he says, that don't have to read the book. But for those that are not aware of the laws, reading the book is tremendous.
Right. And they just maybe are born this way.
Right.
They already act out some of these laws.
Right, instinctively.
So if we start with the first law number 1, which is never outshine the master.
Correct.
So he goes to define it, saying that if you do end up outshining your superior, he's basically saying always make those above you feel comfortably superior. In your desire to please or impress them, do not go too far in displaying your talents, or you might accomplish the opposite.
Right.
Inspire fear and insecurity. So by wanting to show that you are the best at something, or you have these uh, you're able to do something certain way or have these qualities, you risk, according to this law, outshining the master, and then the master now is going to keep an eye on you and maybe inspire fear and maybe want to get rid of you. When I hear that definition, I think of like in a corporate setting. But I'm sure it applies to many things in life, and he uses examples in the times of the courts, the French kings, and how they use these laws. But what are your thoughts on that law number one?
Yeah, I think it's spot on, because we all have insecurities. I don't think you're normal if you don't. Okay, and we have our challenges, and everybody's aware we're not, as human beings, we're imperfect. Okay, we're always constantly trying to learn and better ourselves. Period. If somebody comes along that can do the job better than you, and you're in a management position, and this person outshines you by leaps and bounds, then there is the possibility that the higher ups, way higher ups, may look at that particular person and say, this is a better person for the job. So the insecurities of the person just above you can kick in and say, hey, this guy is gunning for my job. Now, Robert Greene talks about being in Hollywood, and Hollywood is apparently notorious for using these laws. But like you said, I think these laws apply across the landfill. And in a corporate setting, I can see it happening a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you just have to be careful, do the best you can, and be aware of what's happening a little bit higher up, because you potentially, Robert got fired. Robert Greene got fired for doing a better job, and he was in Hollywood, and I forget what he was doing, whether it was research and he was doing exceptionally well, and then the next thing he got fired.
Yeah.
And by doing an excellent job, you're doing an excellent job and you get fired. So it doesn't make sense, but
yeah,
this is what happens.
And it goes contrary to what I think what we're taught, maybe what it's instilled in us from education to parents, is do your best, always do your best. But Robert Greene's saying,
be
careful, because your best might be stepping on somebody else's toes and making somebody else look bad. And so it's interesting how you're maneuvering. Now, some people may just say, I don't care, I'm just going to do my best, and whatever the result is, so be it, right?
Right.
But I think he's talking about being able to, and I think of it in a corporate setting, because I was in a corporate setting too, with business, and you have a lot of egos, you have a lot of people that are doing big things, and you have some people that maybe are kind of getting by, and then you have some people that are almost just trying to keep their jobs, so they don't want blame put on them. And there's a lot of games and a lot of politics in corporations, especially. There's politics in soccer and FIFA, everywhere. But it goes contrary to what. So if you're coming up and you're working in a business and a corporation, I guess it's just keeping that in mind and still just knowing how to maneuver those things.
Yeah. Yeah, Patrick Bet-David talks about it too, where there's, I remember a podcast he did, or one of his analysis, and he was saying that sometimes you do the work and somebody else tries to take, the benefit of that. The credit of that, okay? And that also happens, and you need to be quite aware. You need to have like a trail that comes back to you in terms of getting credit for things. So, it's a balancing act. It's a balancing act. If you're in a situation where you are trying to climb that corporate ladder, okay, you have to have nerves of steel and have a balancing act so that you don't shove one guy the wrong way and another one the wrong way or good way or whatever, you want to be careful the battles you choose to fight in order to win the war. Okay, um, you have to be very very careful when you choose your team
Yeah.
because you don't want to rub somebody the wrong way that can be a tremendous sizable enemy on your way up, you know. And uh, there's only room for a few up above, there's one leader, and then below them maybe two, and then below them maybe three.
Right.
So there isn't that much room up above, so you have to be very careful how you climb it. Get a good grip on that ladder and be careful. You got to have a balancing act.
Yeah.
There's no way around it.
Yeah, and the master in this law is basically anybody above, in a position above you in a workplace or any organization. I still think we should always do our best and let the numbers do the talking. But if there's a situation where maybe doing one thing will make you shine too much, that's where it's just being careful and knowing how to maneuver that. But I just don't see it being a justifying.
You would have an issue.
Yeah, I
would have an issue not doing
my
your
best.
Yeah, right. You would have an issue.
Yeah.
Because it's intrinsically ingrained in you to do the best you possibly can. And in the process of doing that, you are going to make somebody uncomfortable, potentially higher up.
Yeah.
Again, we all have insecurities.
Yeah.
And so, you would have an issue, and it would be a mental battle.
Yeah.
It would be something that you would have to, if you were aware of the fact that someone higher above you would potentially terminate your employment, because a lot of people are not aware of this. Okay.
Mhm.
And in fact,
Correct.
I would say most people would not be aware. Most people would not be aware.
Right.
So, but yeah, I think try your best, but you have to keep your eyes open. You don't know where the next hit is gonna come from. It may come from the left, the right, the front. You just don't know. And in the corporate world, friendship can be superficial.
Right. Yeah, it's business at the end of the day, and it's cutthroat, and it's survival of the fittest, and they could.
So the guy that reaches the top is got to be a person of many talents.
Absolutely. So that's our take on law number 1, and then anything else on that one that you wanted to add on
No.
that law?
No, I think.
How have you used it in your life? Because you didn't come out read this book until the book is what, maybe 10 years old or so. I mean, I don't think it's.
Yeah, it's either 10 or 12 years old.
Have you used it in your?
And I
life?
think one interesting point on this book, I think this book had a tremendous impact. I think Robert Greene said that a lot of the people that have read this book were people in jail.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the book might be 15 years old, man.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
little older. It was released in 1998.
There you go. Ooh.
Yeah.
So it's
24
yeah, 24 years old.
25 years old.
And that book revolutionized a lot of industries because now people became aware of some
The
of
games.
these. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the games.
So you've used it in your life?
Fortunately, I haven't had the dilemma to worry about not trying my best. I've been a salesman, and as a salesman, I always got rewarded by selling the most, and so I always tried to sell the most I could within parameters of doing the right thing. for people, for the client. What was interesting to me is that when we had the interview with Calvin, and he's a bodybuilder, in the podcast he said, I'm selling all the time.
Right.
I'm selling all the time. So, to a certain extent, we're all salesmen and saleswomen, you know? So I haven't come across that because I stayed away from the corporate world. And I ended up, by the good graces of God, opening up my own businesses and running them. And, but there's just a lot of stuff because, for example, if even the way you do payment and you figure out bonuses, some of these stuff needs to be considered, you know. But no, I haven't had. I can't say or I can't think at this moment
Too
any
many.
point. No.
Yeah, it's maybe being more independently running business, and you didn't really have to deal with it as much.
No,
But I'm sure.
But I did see it though.
Yeah.
I saw it in middle management and upper management.
Yeah.
How some of the games were played and so forth, and some of the numbers can potentially be skewed, and it happens everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. You just have to be aware of it, and at the end of the day, be true to yourself. You have to, and you need to know a little bit about human nature. Whoever is higher above you, okay. There's some people that are really experts in pushing people's buttons, so you have to be very careful.
Yeah.
You can't be doing that and expect to get too far.
I agree. So let's get into law number 2
Okay.
from the 48 Laws of Power, which is never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. And then it goes to explain friends are more likely to betray you in haste, as they are more prone to envy. However, if you hire a former enemy, they will prove themselves more trustworthy, as they have more to prove. What do you think about that one?
I have a lot of problems with that one. Okay. But he cites the example that if you hire an enemy, okay, and he's talking about in the book. I hope I'm correct in this, but because I've read the book a couple times, but I think he's citing like warlords, like samurais, or not samurais, but in the times that you would fight with swords and stuff like that. Because what he's saying is an enemy that you have captured and potentially you're going to put to death, okay, will do absolutely anything within his power to win back your graces. So what he's saying is this enemy is going to go way out of his way to do whatever it is that he has to do to win your graces back. So, and then what he's saying is that a friend will fall into the temptation of envy. I have a problem with that one. I mean, Robert Greene, I consider him one of the best writers of this century. But with that one, I have a little bit of trouble because what do I have? I have good friends, 2, 3 very good friends that I would not have any problem starting a business with. And maybe Robert Greene would look at me and say, "Oh, you're naive," But they're your friends. So if you got a business that's prospering, or is going to prosper, and your friend is down on his luck, and he's your friend, he's stuck with you throughout the years, why not bring him on board? But when you do that, the only thing is you need to be very clear on what the job description would be, you know. Robert says something about it's hard to keep the friendship and the business separate, you know. And I can see that because I've worked with family, and it's hard sometimes to keep the business and the family boundaries separate from each other. Sometimes they mix,
Yeah.
and that's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So-
remember he cites in the book a story about a gentleman that um, raised or helped another friend that was down.
Mm.
And when the time came and he expected him to come and in aid, the friend who he had helped all those years and helped him when he was down did not, he chose the other side. And this was in the times of wars, like you're saying. Uh, sword and
Right.
armor and those types of. And I don't know if it was, the French or the Roman, but he expected the friend to come through and he didn't. And the friend betrayed him.
Right. And
And so-
actually killed him. I think that in that law, and I hope I'm not wrong, but I think that the friend actually killed him. He didn't. Not only did he not come through, he actually betrayed him to the extent that he took his life. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, but I think it has to do also with friends, we let our guard down. And my interpretation is with someone we perceive as an enemy, we're going to be a lot more, have a wall up and make sure that this guy doesn't swindle us, hurt us, whatever the case. And so the fact that we have our guard down with our friends, you're more
vulnerable.
vulnerable. You're more vulnerable.
Yeah. I have a lot of problem with this one. Okay.
Yeah.
Out of all the laws, this is the one that I have the most trouble with, because, and I remember the first time I read this law, I said, "Oh, he's wrong. He's got to be wrong." And then he cites examples, that have happened throughout history,
Yeah.
and then I can see the logic of him. Robert Greene. I think he's a genius. So who am I to disagree with a man that's put all these books out that they're all bestsellers, all of them. He's got like 7 of them out, and they're all tremendous books. But I, even to this day, I have a problem with this law. But yeah,
But doesn't it make sense you're more vulnerable?
with friends
With
in
friends.
business, I would tend to think so, just because of the same
In
reason
business
you cited.
in business or in other situations, because you're also expecting something from that friend. You're expecting them to be there when is needed, and if they don't, that's where the betrayal comes.
Or you feel betrayed because they haven't come through.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like blanket statement all
Right.
situations,
Right.
but like you said in the book, he actually states the examples in history where he makes his case.
Yeah, and it's I agree.
Yeah.
He's won me over. But when I go back, when I read the examples that he cites in the book, okay, I can see it. But then when I come back and sit on my chair and I get into my comfortable position,
Yeah.
I just don't see my friends. See, because look, as you get older, I'm a lot older than you, of course. And, I've had a lot of good friends. And some of those friends are no longer in my inner circle. The question is, why not? Well, because some of them moved out of state, some of them went through divorce, and then it wasn't the same again. Others, life goes on. Everybody has to live. Children come. Everybody's extremely busy. So, I think that as you get older, if you have 2 or 3 good friends, 2 or people that you call good friends, you're lucky, Whereas when I was younger, I remember we had many friends and couples. We got together for dinners, and 3 or 4 couples, and all that has changed. This is no longer the case. So, friends come and go.
Yeah.
The good friends stay, but they're not many. 1 or 2.
Yeah.
That's it. That's my perception.
Yeah.
I
think
what I've lived.
I think Grandpa would say that true friends you can count in one hand.
Didn't
he
hand.
used to say that?
Yes.
And so
that's right.
Some people have a lot more friends and everything. My definition of a friend is somebody who accepts the good and the bad of you, because no one's perfect, and somebody who will be there when the time is needed. But then the thing is, you go into expectations.
Well, anytime you have expectations from anyone, you're gonna fumble the ball.
Yeah.
Because they're never gonna come through 100% of the time. So if you have expectations, that's why I always say expect nothing, because in anything that you do, okay, you have to do without expecting anything in return. I think that's the best policy, to be honest with you. Anytime you have expectations, you're going down a very narrow road.
Yeah.
And potentially it'll end quickly.
Actually, it kind of goes in with never assume, which was one of the 4 agreements that we did in a previous podcast, where that's one of the laws or the agreements to live by. Never assume or make assumptions. And I think expectations are assumptions.
Yeah.
You're assuming they're gonna be there when you need them.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, these 2 laws alone are really, truly incredible. And I think that it also depends on your lifestyle, okay? Because, for example, if you are in the corporate setting, if you are in the corporate world, you're definitely shifting sides with the tide. One day your friend could be your enemy, and then the next day your enemy could be your friend.
Yeah.
And there's that famous saying out there that says, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? So the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And you never know, because once you get into the politics, business, but you see it in every setting. You see it in hospitals, hospital management. You see it all over the place. And so the guy that's on top, it's already been banged around a little bit. He's got a few calluses around, his body and stuff like that. Him or her got up there by being smart, flexible, careful, astute. It's you don't get to the top with only one ingredient, okay? You get to the top with a mix of things that, and as you know, you got to be aware of your surroundings and the people that, and then also the shifting of the tides that they call. For example, the businesses will change over a period of time. Forget about the politics within the internal structure of this setting. What about the outside forces? How they may or may not change a business. For example, in the business that I was for many years, which was insurance, as the rules changed, we had to, if you had all your focus on one particular product, and the rules changed, legislature all of a sudden changed, making this product not a viable thing. Now you have to change to the other product. If you stayed headstrong on still continuing to do this particular product, you would not survive. Mm-hmm. So you have to be flexible. You have to be able to change colors like the chameleons, It depends on what tree you're in. If the tree has a dark bark, you turn dark. If the tree is green, you turn green. If it's purple, you turn purple. You have to be a chameleon and adapt to the circumstances, not only internally in your corporation, but also outside sources,
Sure.
you know? And so I think Robert Greene is a genius. And who am I to disagree with him? But I have problems with the second one, is the one that's always giving me trouble. The first one, no problem. And the rest of them, no problem. He's just.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into the other ones on another one, but I think it was cool to go a little in depth there and see where I'm trying to think if there's any situation that I've seen it in action in terms of outshining the master in like a corporate setting or just something like that we've seen.
Well, I've seen it in action in a corporate setting. I just haven't been part of it because I was always on the sales side. So,
but I'm trying to think of like, let's say like in the UFC, has there been something recently where one of the here's a perfect example. Never outshine the master. Cristiano Ronaldo getting benched on his last World Cup game.
oh my God.
One of the best players in the world, benched.
I know.
Who's the master on that team? The coach.
Yes.
And so I think that's I think the example that maybe we could
Close it out with.
close with. No matter
Yeah.
how good he is.
The best player in the world. There's some politics there for sure. There's politics there for sure.
Yeah.
There's no other way to describe it. How do you bench somebody like that?
Yeah.
It's got to be a personal issue, I would believe. Something that happened that was, they rubbed each other the wrong way, and who knows exactly what it is. I'm not following that, I follow, his career in the sense of scoring and stuff like that. I really like the guy. Some people say that he's very proud, but, he's young, one of the best. He's got an ego,
Yeah.
But yes, that is a perfect example, Mike. Yeah.
Cool. We'll wrap it up there.
All right. Thanks again.